Hello. So far, we have learned in chapter 1 the market, what is there to buy. In chapter 2, how much we can buy, the budget constraint. And in this chapter, chapter 3, we'll understand which of the goods or rather which consumption bundles we prefer. So, what is the meaning of a consumption bundle? Consumption bundle essentially means the entire basket of goods which you are going to consume. Now, if I talk about consumption bundle and if it contains, let's say, hundreds of goods, now it is definitely not an easy exercise for us to start any kind of a conceptual exercise. So to simplify this, what we can do is we can resort to a two good consumption bundle. Now you may say that it is a quite specific case, and does this generally hold good? Our insights which we derive from this two goods consumption bundle, does it hold good in a general scenario? So the answer is yes, because you can think of it in this way that let's say good 1 is a good which you are really concerned about, and good 2 could be concerned with all the other goods, right? So this is a kind of a mathematical simplification which you can perform. So essentially what we will be covering in this chapter is which consumption bundles you prefer and why you prefer, and that is the name of this chapter as well, preferences. So when we talk about preferences, we have to understand few ideas, and then we will talk about few assumptions and axioms of our consumer preference. When we talk about consumer preferences, there are essentially three things which we are looking for. What are those three things? The first thing is weakly preferred. Second thing would be indifferent. And third thing would be your strongly preferred or strictly. I can say just strictly preferred. Now, what is the meaning of these guys? Weak preference, indifference, and strict preference. When I say I weakly prefer a consumption bundle over the other, what I mean is it's like a greater than equal to kind of a thing. So what we will write here is like this. Now, the meaning of this guy over here is essentially if you talk about consumption bundle A and consumption bundle B. Now remember, consumption bundle is a collection of goods. So you weakly prefer A to B. It's a consumption bundle. Now weakly prefer means that either you prefer them in the same way or you prefer A slightly better than B. So given a choice between B and A, you will either prefer A or you will be indifferent between A and B. Meaning to say this, that on some days you might say that A and B are equally good to me, and on some days you might say that A is better than B, right? Now what is the other case? The other case is your indifference. Now I can say indifference is like this. Now indifference meaning that I will always say that A and B are equal to me in terms of preference. Now what about strict preference? For strict preference, what you have to understand is I strictly prefer one of the consumption bundles. So over here I am strictly preferring A over B, right? So let's have a summary. Weakly preference denoted by this means A is weakly preferred to B, which means A is either as good as B or greater than B. Now, what about indifference? It says that A is equal to B in terms of preference. Now, this strict preference meaning A is strongly or strictly preferred to B, which means I'll always prefer A over B. So these are the three things which you had to remember when we start about the discussion on preference. Now, having understood this, let's just head on to few axioms of consumer preferences or assumptions of consumer preferences. So to begin with, let's start with complete. What do we mean by complete? So let us say you have a lot of consumption bundles to choose from, and if you can completely rank all the consumption bundles. The meaning of rank is, let's understand in terms of completeness. I can always take two consumption bundles and would be able to say whether I weakly prefer one consumption bundle over the other, or I am indifferent between them, or I strongly prefer one of the consumption bundles. So I can do this over all choices. What about reflexive? Reflexive means that you can at least say that the consumption bundle which you are considering is as at least as good as itself. This is more like a kind of a more philosophical and more mathematical exercise, but for our purpose, even if you do not really find it meaningful, it's okay. But as you progress ahead in more chapters in your post graduation, you'll understand that this has some kind of an advantage or some kind of usefulness. So as of now, this is for no meaning as of now. When you feel that this is obvious, right? Let's for sake of completion just understand there's something called reflexive property, which says that any good or rather any consumption bundle is as good as at least as good as itself, right? What about the transitive nature? For transitive, you can say that, let us say you have three consumption bundles A, B and C, and you say that I weakly prefer A over B, and I also weakly prefer B over C. So I can summarize this using this way. And if transitive property holds or transitive assumption or axiom hold, then I can write this directly as A weakly preferred to C. So what I have done is, it's pretty simple. I have removed out the intermediary, right? Now this has some kind of a logical understanding to it or some kind of a logical reasoning behind it, because let us say you are saying that you prefer A over B and B over C, and then suddenly you say that no, I also prefer C over A. Now this is something which is definitely not logical as per our assumptions are concerned, because in that case, using this logic, the earlier logic, you prefer A over B, then B over C. Then natural logical deduction is you prefer A over C, right? Because given a choice between three bundles, A, B and C, so if you prefer B over C, if I give you something better than B, definitely you will choose that better thing, not C. But if you are saying that you choose C over the better thing than B, definitely there is some kind of a logical flaw in this. But having said that, consumers generally are not computers, so they can have this kind of a preference as well. But for our elementary purpose, for our basic understanding of consumer preferences, we will be considering transitive as given, right? We will not be considering this kind of a situation. So this is ruled out for our purposes. We will be considering only this kind of a preference relation. So what all things which you have to remember? Complete. This is important. If this is not true, then obviously you cannot compare between all the consumption bundles. Now reflexive. Now this is something which has a mathematical and philosophical ease to it, so you can leave it for now. And transitive obviously has some kind of a logical basis to it. If it's not transitive, definitely you land into very strange kind of situations. Yes. So this is the basic idea about axioms of consumer preferences. Now let's try to understand these things a bit more graphically and mathematically. As we are considering two goods consumption bundles, so let's denote that thing. Let's say X is your consumption bundle, right? So X is essentially a combination of two goods, X1 and X2. Now if you had, let's say 3-4 goods in the consumption bundle, I would have said that X is X1, X2 and so on, right? So if you have n goods, X1, X2 till Xn. So for our case, we just have two goods. So X meaning X1, X2 pair. So let us say you have a consumption bundle somewhere around here. This point as X1, X2. This thing over here is your X1 and this thing over here is your X2. Now what about if I ask you which are the goods which you strictly prefer over this or weakly prefer over this? So what will you do is you will plot all the points, or rather you will denote all the consumption bundles on this chart which I weakly prefer over this. So how will we plot that? Now let's say these points above this x1 x2 and above this line are the consumption bundles which you weakly prefer to x1 x2. So what will you call the consumption bundles on this region? Weakly preferred set, right? So in this set, all the consumption bundles will be weakly preferred as compared to this point over here, this consumption bundle which you have. And what about this boundary? This boundary will become your indifference curve. Now why it will become your indifference curve? Because on this boundary you will prefer all the consumption bundles in the same way. So you will have a kind of indifference between all the consumption bundles on this line, and that way this will become your indifference curve. Now there's an important property about indifference curves which you must know. Let's say this is your indifference curve and this is one of the consumption bundles which you have, right? Let me just write it as XA, right? Capital XA. And from here you are kind of assuming that you can also draw another indifference curve, right? So let's just, for the sake of assumption, let's draw another indifference curve through this same consumption bundle. So what will this mean? This will mean that, let's say you have this as a consumption bundle, this as a consumption bundle, and this as a consumption bundle. So this is your XB and this is your XC. What does this mean? This means that as you're seeing that I can draw two indifference curves through this XA bundle, first of all you will say that XA is indifferent to XB, right? And you will also say that XA is indifferent to XC. Now if I combine both of these guys, you will get XA is indifferent to XB is indifferent to XC. Now does this really mean something meaningful? Doesn't. Because why? Because if I think about my weak preference set, this is my weak preference set, right? And I know that the boundary is your indifference curve or your indifference line or your indifference consumption bundles, and above what you will have is your strict preference, because your weakly preferred set contains the indifference curve. And if you take out the indifference curve and just think of the upper part, that will be your strict preference. So according to your weakly preferred set criteria, XC is not weakly preferred, it's strongly preferred or strictly preferred to XA. So according to this logic, we know that XC is definitely strictly preferred to XA, and according to this logic you will say that XA is your weak indifferent to XC, which makes no sense. This goes on to prove that your indifference curves cannot intersect, or rather from a consumption bundle you can only draw one indifference curve. You cannot have multiple difference curves. If we have understood this much, we can safely go on to few known preferences like perfect substitutes and perfect complements, right? So let's just head on to perfect substitutes first. So what is the intuitive understanding about perfect substitutes? For perfect substitutes, what we do is, in a consumption bundle of two goods, you prefer the same amount of good 1 and good 2, right? What I mean is, let's say I give you an offer that I will give you 100 units of good 1, and in another offer I'll give you 100 units of good 2. You will be indifferent between these two choices. Either you will take the 100 good 1 or you will take the 100 good 2. Now let's take an example of this. So let's say you have two pen manufacturers and you are kind of like indifferent between these pen manufacturers, right? So what you say is, let's say you have a brand A and brand B. So when you go to the market, you do not have any preference between brand A and brand B. You say that give me either brand A or brand B. So it becomes a classic case of a perfect substitute, because your brand A can be substituted for brand B and vice versa. So how will you plot this kind of a situation on your graph? Now this is your case of indifference between two goods in that consumption bundle. Now why will this be a case of perfect substitutes? Let's understand this. Because if I take this point over here, any point, let's say, just think about this as x1 and x2, right? Now over here you will understand that, let me say that this is my y-intercept. My y-intercept is, let's say, some A, and let's say my b-intercept is some kind of a B. Okay, now if I have to give you an understanding of this, you can say that I can find out the equation for this line. What will the equation for this line? The equation for this line will be nothing but x1 upon B plus x2 upon A is equal to 1, right? So if I tell you that this is my case of indifference curve for perfect substitutes, what does this mean? This means that let's say I also give you one other condition, that A is equal to B, right? So in that case you can further simplify this as x1 plus x2, and this will be equal to your B, which means that sum of the two goods in the bundle must be equal to B. What does this thing even mean in terms of substitutes? It means that give me either 0B or B0 or 1 B minus 1 or B minus 1 1 and so on. It means that you really do not care whether you are getting more of good one or more of good two, as long as the sum is the same. So this is the classic case of your perfect substitutes. Now over here we have taken a simplification of A equal to B. Now when A is not equal to B, you will have kind of a proportion, right? And over here this will give you that proportion in which you prefer A over B, and rather you are not preferring also, you are indifferent over this, right? So let's say there is a pen which is kind of helps you in writing more, right, but it has a higher price, right? So maybe you will have some kind of a relationship between x1 and x2, pen A and pen B, but that will be kind of a fixed relation, right? And it's as they both are kind of a substitute for you because they do the same job of writing. So you will have some kind of preference on terms of the ratio, not in terms of which you prefer more. It's just a matter of a ratio over here. But let's say if the ratio is 1:1, in that case you are not even worried about that ratio. You are like indifferent between which good you are getting in which quantity. But if A is not equal to B, even in that situation it's kind of a substitute, but that is kind of a more general form of a substitute, right? But in most of the questions which you will be getting in your exams, you will be considering only this case when A is equal to B, but you might get questions in which A is not equal to B. But do not get confused, even that is the case of your substitutes, right? Now let's move on to complements or perfect complements. A classic case of complements will be that, let's say you're buying a pen, so you need some kind of a paper or a notebook. So pen and paper are your complements, right? And if you have, let's say, 100 of pens and just one piece of paper, you will not be able to use pens properly. So you need some kind of a complementary relationship between pen and paper, right? And that relationship is captured by your perfect complements. Okay, so let's try to understand how will we draw the indifference curves for perfect complements. Now perfect complements could be pen and paper, could be sugar and tea powder, or it could be milk and sugar, it could be pizza and coke. Now whatever you may prefer. So let's say this is a point which you are right now, which is x1 comma x2. Now if I give you more of x1, right, will I make you better off? No, I will not, because I need some kind of a relationship between x and x2, right? Because they are complements. Because if I, let's say, give you 2 pens and 100 pieces of paper or 100 units of paper, So maybe your 2 pens will be exhausted in those 100 units of paper, and if I give you more paper or more pen, obviously you will not be able to use the pen or paper respectively, right? So if I give you more of good one and do not give you good two, in that situation you will be indifferent, because you'll not be able to use the more of good one, because you need more of good two as well along with it. So what's the other case? If I give you more of good two and do not give you the good one, in that situation also you'll have the same problem, that I need more of good one along with more of good two, or else I'll be indifferent. So along this line you will be indifferent, because it's not improving your happiness or your how would I put it, your usefulness, right? So this is a point, and if you go horizontally or vertically, you will have the same kind of usefulness of the consumption bundles. So you say that I am not going to prefer any consumption bundle on this line, or rather on these two lines over this. So this becomes your indifference curve for perfect complements. So you have understood so far that what is perfect substitutes and what is perfect complements, and you also understood how to draw the indifference curves for the same. Is everything that you consume good and you do not buy anything which is bad? Think about it. Do you really value everything with a positive sense of the term good, or you can term them as bad or rather neutral? So let's just think about it, and let's, for the sake of theoretical understanding, classify items into goods, bads and neutrals, and let's understand what do we mean by this. Good is something which is liked by you. You have some kind of positive utility associated with it. The more you get of it, you feel better about it. Now what is a bad? Bad is exactly the opposite of it. Bad is something which you really do not like to have or consume or buy. More you get, more bad you feel. So it has a negative utility, or rather a disutility associated with it. Now you can say that doing some kind of a manual labor is a bad, but if I give you some kind of a reward for that, maybe it can be some kind of a fuzzy there. But still, if I have to just give you a manual labor, and that manual labor always be a bad, because more you do of it, you will feel bad about it. Now what about a neutral? Neutral is something which you really do not care about. I mean, whatever the amount of neutral you have or you buy, you really do not get any extra utility or any utility whatsoever. So with this understanding, let's just think about few graphical interpretation of this, and let's just have good in the x-axis always and have bad and neutrals in the y-axis when we need to do. And we also can do one more thing, that we can denote goods as G, bads as your B, and neutrals as your N. If you look at the first diagram, both the goods are good essentially, and in the x-axis you have your standard good, which I'll be using in all the diagrams. In the y-axis we have good. So x, y both have good in this particular diagram. So over here you can see that if I decrease the x-axis good, I'll have to compensate it with y-axis good, because both are goods. So it's like if I decrease one good, I have to increase the other good. That happens when you have two goods in your consumption bundle. Now let's move to a different case in which we have x-axis again is a good and y-axis is a bad. When you have this kind of a situation, if I decrease your good, which is the x-axis, you will definitely have to compensate it with a decrease in bad as well, because if I decrease your good, you will be less happy. So if I have to make you more happy, I have to decrease your bad, which makes an intuitive sense. So that is what happens when you have a bad in the y-axis and good in the x-axis. Now let's move to a different case when we have, let's say, a neutral in the y-axis and a good in the x-axis. In that particular scenario, you can just think about it that no matter what is the quantity of your neutral, you will have the same utility. So it's pretty obvious to see that our vertical line will be your utility. So no matter what is the y value or the y-axis value, I have the same utility. That's the idea about of a neutral y-axis and a good x-axis. Now you can think here that is good something like more is always better, because till now we have classified items into good, bad and neutral, and we have understood what is the interaction between good bad and good neutral. Now let's understand what is the analysis or what is the insight when I increase both of your goods and you have two goods. You do not have any bad, you just have two goods. So if I keep on increasing your good, will you always be happy? Let us say I give you a glass of Coca-Cola and a burger, so you might be happy. So can I continuously give you glasses of Coca-Cola and burgers and you will be always happy? So just think about it. So to understand this, let's have some kind of a concentric utility functions, and if you increase your utility, you have to kind of get towards an ideal point, because you might have an kind of an ideal hunger that this is the amount of burgers you can eat, this is the amount of Coke you can have. So that's the bliss point to say. So if you think about your ideal consumption of any food combination, you will have necessarily something like a bliss point always. But what about something like money and better house? Now you might say that more of money and more of better house is always good for you, so you might think that increasing both of them will always make you happier. Now obviously these are pretty simplistic viewpoints, and this is just like your ABC of economics of preferences. Now definitely in this particular video, all you had to understand was that not everything is good, and you will not enjoy more of good always. You will maybe reach a bliss point in particular situations. Having understood a lot about preferences, about substitutes, complements, indifference curves, then goods, bads, neutrals, and bliss point, and so on, we will be heading on to more in-depth conceptual understanding of well-behaved preferences in the next video.